To my next guest, Mark Littlewood's the Director of Popular Conservatism and joins us. Morning to you, Mark.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Well, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, we talked the talk over the weekend, did lots of interviews, made the announcements formally in the Commons yesterday, although I haven't seen the actual bill that's going to go through Parliament. Already a lot of criticism of her plans to tackle illegal migration and basically deport people from this country. I mean, a lot of it, it sounds quite impressive, we'll have visa bans on countries that won't take people back and fast-tracking deportations and waiting 20 years for permanent settlement and all of that, but we immediately had sort of pushback on, well, you can't, take money or people's jewellery and watches from them to pay for their accommodation, and you can't deport families. We can't have children being put on planes. And then we got anger from the other side of, why are we paying people $3,000 each to get on planes and they have no right to be here? Where do you stand on all of this?
Well, I think overall the Labour government is being dragged inch by inch, incredibly slowly, to somewhere approaching reality. But my God, they're having to be dragged there. I mean, an interesting question is why none of this was in the Labour Party's manifesto last year, right? They seem to have now alighted upon this. They seem to be slowly waking up to the fact that there's a problem. Quite possibly the fact that so many people are voting for reform is sending them an electoral message. But I think inch by inch towards reality, but still a very long way from it. There's no acceptance that we should leave the ECHR altogether, which I think is going to end up, we're going to end up there. We're going to have to do that to really tackle this. So they're still tackling it at the margins. I don't necessarily object to paying people who are here legally, who we may wish to return home, But if you're here illegally and you have no claim to be here, your return to your country of origin.
Who are we trying to deport who's here legally?
Well, if you wanted to, for example, to encourage people who have a right to be here to leave, I think a financial inducement would be reasonable. I'm not saying that is government policy, but if people are here illegally, they shouldn't get a penny. They just need to be removed from the country.
I mean, the argument is like, well, they'll do all these legal challenges, but they'll only do legal challenges if they think they're going to work, or they can keep doing them forever. If you limit, you get one legal challenge and you can do it from abroad, or, various different parties suggested that. As my caller Kevin just said, well, if there's no legal aid, that might dissipate. And certainly other countries, France doesn't offer you legal aid. It's one of the reasons why people come here. But there is an argument like, just put them on the planes. But then, often they're being put on commercial flights, like the one in, one out little exchange scheme with France. They're put on a BA flight. Apparently there are no EasyJet or Ryanair flights to Paris, and they're put on a quarter of the price. They're put on a BA flight, but they stop. You don't want to have people who are kicking off on the plane. The pilots won't take them. But I mean, I'm at the point where we'll just sedate them. I just don't care anymore. I genuinely don't want my money being given to people who've got no right to be here.
Yes, I understand all of that. And I think Kevin, your caller earlier, was interesting, blaming the lefty lawyers. There's some truth in that. But we wouldn't have the problem with the lefty human rights lawyers if we didn't have the lefty human rights laws. That's the actual problem, right? So you need to start repealing the laws. If it's the law of the land that you've got a million grounds on which you can appeal, including whether your son likes the taste of English chicken nuggets, well, then expect lefty human rights lawyers to flock to their aid.
But again, often this is done under Article 8, the right to privacy in a family life, and I've read out the full thing. There's 2 paragraphs. The lefty lawyers and the judges and tribunals appear to only look at one of those and not the second paragraph, which is there is no question at all you can deport people if they're a threat to national security or to other issues or public safety and even economic costs of them. You're allowed to deport people. It's absurd that we don't need to change the law, really. We need to change the people who are absurdly misinterpreting the law.
Yeah, it's now been interpreted way beyond the intentions of the original draft. I'm told that when it was originally drafted, Article 8 was essentially supposed to mean that the Gestapo can't raid your house. That was essentially what it was referring to, not that you had all of these unbelievably overprotected rights to a family life. I mean, it's been interpreted beyond reason. The problem, however, of course, Julia, is once those interpretations happen, they become common law precedent, right? So once you've established a case in court that you have a right to X or a right to Y, or we need to consider A, B or C, that becomes established precedent. So I think we're not just going to have to radically change the interpretation
Yeah.
of Article 8, we're probably going to have to annul it in some way. Otherwise, those common law precedents...
Cut those precedents, start again. What do you make of the freebies? You know, the Sun front page today, legal migrants getting free maths tutors. I know that many families that would be desperate after being failed by their local com to get maths tutoring for their kids. I mean, you're looking at 50 quid an hour, frankly, getting access to, you know, private GPs, priority access, and they're getting exercise classes. I mean, these are people who are in deportation centres. They're awaiting deportation. I mean, this is... Who does this? Who pays for this? Why is this even happening?
Very good question. I mean, it's beyond madness, isn't it? It's gone completely out of control. We should be providing, while we are processing your case, which, by the way, should take about 18 days rather than 18 months, which I think is about the average to process a case, with the very barest minimum. Look, I don't want to make it unnecessarily unpleasant, but it should be the barest minimum that you're provided with, not exercise classes, not maths tuitions, not PlayStations, not widescreen televisions, the barest minimum, humane conditions, but not much beyond that, frankly. And the maths tuition stuff, extraordinary. On the medical side, well, I can understand for the interests of the rest of us, you might want to check that somebody who's come in hasn't brought an illness or a disease or a virus with them for the protection of the wider population. But if the medical support is for their own benefit, then, they shouldn't be getting anything better than British citizens get on the NHS.
Well, exactly. If it's a 2 months wait to go and get an appointment for this or that, well, then that's what we're having. That's what you get too. It is. I mean, we had the scandal, didn't we, a few months ago about them having a right to go back to a GP or a doctor they'd seen, months ago and have a £300 round trip taxi. I mean, it's just extraordinary. It really is. In fact, they got the appointments at all. Not a surprise that people are very disappointed in this Prime Minister. He is the least popular Prime Minister, since records began in the 70s. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, also the least popular Chancellor. Nearly half of Labour voters now say they want Keir Starmer to step down. Given that our constitution wouldn't require a changing government, there's no way Labour MPs are going to want to go for an election. I know the Prime Minister could just say, well, if you force me out, I'm going to the King and I'm going to force an election. He could do that under our constitution. But if we did get rid of Keir Starmer, or whether it's after the budget, whether it's, I think as many people are now expecting it still might happen next summer, who would be a better alternative given that Labour MPs and indeed Labour voters, Labour Party members, tend to go for the more left-wing candidate?
Yes, I think for those of us on the right of centre of the spectrum, we should be a bit careful what we wish for here. I believe Ed Miliband is the most popular cabinet minister amongst Labour Party members.
It would be good fun, though. Those 2 weeks before the country imploded would be fun.
We would be back to the banter era. You're absolutely right, Julia. But the damage it might wreak on the British economy would be huge. I suspect that Keir Starmer is dead man walking. It seems to me extremely unlikely, almost wholly implausible that he can turn around his poll ratings from the abysmal numbers they're at. And if we see in the budget, I know they now seem to have retreated on their initial income tax idea, but if we see in the budget anything that breaks the Labour Party's manifesto, clearly and unambiguously, that to my mind, I think will signal to the Labour Party that there's no way that Keir Starmer could lead them into the next election, because any promises made in the next election campaign would be laughed at if those made in the last election campaign were broken. So I would have thought that the Labour Party are likely to conclude sooner rather than later that they need to change Prime Minister. No need for a general election, as you rightly say, Julia. In fact, 6 of our last 10 Prime Ministers came in mid-term. Only 4 out of 10.
We're turning into Germany. There was a point, I think, where they had 50 years where they didn't change a government at any point as a result of an election. It was like coalitions, wasn't it? What do you make of Kemi Badenoch and her announcement in terms of the budget coming up next week, and basically saying they expect the government to scrap the 2-child benefit cap? She said, I want people to know that a future Conservative government will bring it back. It is extraordinary. The government has strongly hinted they're going to bring back payments for third, fourth. We don't know whether it's going to be capped at a higher rate or whether it's going to be tapered or what they're going to do. But basically, keep on having kids that you can't afford. An extra £3,500 a year. It's not a couple of quid. £3,500 a year for every extra child if you get rid of that cap and just go back to what it was before. But apparently we've got no money, but we're going to make sure that people who can't afford kids can carry on having kids.
Yeah, I mean, my worry across the board, Julia, is there seems to be absolutely no area of public expenditure where the Labour Party seems to be able to save money. You can make trade-offs, if you want to spend more on one particular area, okay, but then try and find big savings in another area. I can't think of any area of public expenditure where the Labour Party, this Labour government, appears to have any idea whatsoever about how savings could be found. And I'm afraid if the public finances are out of control, and they basically are, you need a government that's willing, overall, in aggregate, to find some very, very substantial savings.
Yep.
And certainly if you want to spend more on something, even more than we're spending at the moment, that needs to be offset by even bigger savings elsewhere. But there is no appetite that I can detect on the Labour backbenchers for any sort of government reductions in spending whatsoever.
Well, indeed. I mean,
Reeves and Starmer are at the mercy of the parliamentary Labour Party.
Kemi Badenoch, they're talking about slashing £23 billion from the welfare bill. Reform also want to slash the welfare bill. They say they could fill the £25 billion hole in the budget, but also saying that would include cutting foreign aid down from, I think, 14 billion to just £1 billion, just what they, the money they give to the UN and a few other international bodies, and that's it. Would you support that?
Yes, I do support that. I mean, I think that probably rather than us having a foreign aid budget, it would be wise for the government to have some sort of contingency fund that we need to dip into. But the insanity of the foreign aid budget was that we were having to spend it year in, year out, even if there were not worthy causes to spend it on. So there was this rush by officials to spend the money because they had to hit the target of spending what used to be 0.7%. I don't think you need an annual foreign aid budget. I do support certain cases if there is a humanitarian disaster that we should intervene, but we should take that on a case-by-case basis out of some sort of contingency fund that we build up, rather than having a set amount each year that we're determined to spend.
And if the country you're helping has a president who lives in a palace and has a private jet, maybe they don't get any money at all, going out on a limb. Just finally, I want to ask you, this came up this morning about this plan by governments to announce a crackdown on ticket touts and resale sites that offer tickets for concerts and everything else at several times their face value. Of course, we had this big outcry over Oasis tickets in autumn last year. I mean, we were sitting there as the price surged. I think we were offered, finally, after 6 hours, got to, I think, over 350 quid for tickets. I mean, I don't even think we were in Wembley anymore. I think we were actually in Cardiff. We were so far away, and I went, I've seen Oasis live, with all due respect, as good as they are, they ain't worth that much money for tickets that bad, and we decided not to get them. But the big issue often is that people try and buy tickets, they can't get tickets at all. Now they were surging the price of the ticket within their own ticket sales, but we've seen tickets go on sale for £3,000 that had a market price of £200 when they were first sold. We've got a lot of ticket agencies, we've got bots buying them en masse to then deliberately sell them off. Should there be a ban on reselling concert tickets for profit? That's what the government proposes.
No, I don't think the government needs to get involved here. I do think that bands like Oasis or other popular pop stars and groups probably need to think through the implications of their own PR if they find out all of their tickets are bought by bots. But at some point, the market will find its own price, Julia. All right, £350 to go to an Oasis concert isn't worth it for you, say. But there's probably somebody out there who it is worth.
People were paying £3,500 for the same tickets a few months later.
There you go. There you go. I mean, I quite like what Kate Bush did. She had a kind of loyalty scheme that if you had been signed up to her newsletter for at least a year, you got first dibs, rather than it just being everything hits the market at the same time. So I think it's likely that the bands themselves, for fear of the public relations backlash, should find those sort of schemes. But it's no business of the government what a pop band want to charge for a ticket to listen and play music at Wembley Stadium.
Very interesting. Mark Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism. Thank you for that. Benjamin Butterworth, where are you on the ticket taxing? Because it sounds like a good idea. People think that's a good idea, but then we've all got a better chance of getting the tickets on the first round, and the profit doesn't go to the ticket tout agencies, the Viagogos and others, even though they're providing a service. But if you're not willing to pay £3,000 for bog standard tickets, it's not like you're getting VIP passes backstage or a dinner beforehand for that. Then people don't have to pay it. But there's an argument that actually it'll just move on to the black market.
I think for £3,000 I'd want to marry a Gallagher, right, at that price.
I'd want a lot more than that,
But, I mean, look, ticket touts are exploiting the system. It's not a part of the market economy, because what they're doing is buying up a load of tickets and then exploiting the supply and demand to then force people to pay crazy prices for it. So whose interest is that in? Well, not the consumer, because we're paying more, and not the industry, because the money isn't actually going to the... They're not getting any more money. If they want to sell a ticket for £3,000 and someone's going to need to pay it, that's fair enough, but I don't understand why the middleman gets to do it. Exactly.
That you've got to stop the bots buying them.
Exactly. But also, of course, this plays into surge pricing, which was the big outrage at Oasis, because if you've got a few people buying up loads of tickets, then that is going to distort the price.
When you get on the website and you think the tickets are this price and then it goes up, but there was a big backlash to that. They were, nothing to do with us, Gov. They probably didn't know anything about it, but they were certainly making the money from it. Anyway.